Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Charel Morris of Stone Circle Productions. But that's not all she is. She is a spiritual shapeshifter, and she supported women and men, entrepreneurs who decided to expand their positive influence and impact on the world. And she has helped them awaken their abilities and use powerful thoughts and words and inner knowingness to create the life they truly desired. Using fluid at the time's surprising techniques, we experience their business, bringing dreams into focus and then into real life. One of the reasons why I contacted Charel to begin with is because I'm looking to manifest more of what I want out of life. And we had a wonderful discussion about that. And I learned Charel's coin name, the Intergalactic Shaman. And there was a story behind that, too. Why don't we start with that, the Intergalactic Shaman? Because I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it's sort of fun. Thank you, Michael. Mm-hmm. I've spent maybe 4 decades now studying shamanic practices from various places in the world, and also developing my own shamanic practice as a 21st century shaman. And at the same time, I've been doing conferences, basically very technologically based conferences, hackers and open source and such. And through that, I started doing a conference called WeirdCon, which was live action role playing and all kinds of gaming, and then did a conference a few years back, Intergalactic Con down in San Diego, very Star Wars, and I love all of that. And in my work, I started bringing in the quantum field about 15 years ago. And I was sort of just playing around with it. It's like how I describe that I'm working with ancient practices in the shamanic realm and blending them into kind of otherworldly, advanced elements of the quantum field, and how I sort of see that balance within my work. And Intergalactic Shaman sort of popped into my head, and I thought everyone would be like, no, honey, you need to have something a little more realistic. And I was with this group of entrepreneurs, and they all just like, that's great. And I was like, all right, here we are, Intergalactic Shaman. Yeah. So that's a little tagline I use.
Yeah, I just thought it was very fun and unique, because I'd never heard anyone else use that. So yeah, so
well, and that helps too.
Yeah. So tell everybody about how you actually came to, because would you actually teach people being able to create what they desire? How did you learn to do that for yourself?
Well, I started my practice in what was then called religious science is now called Center for Spiritual Living, which was created by this gentleman, Ernest Holmes, in the first half of the 20th century. And there was actually a very strong New Thought healing movement in the U.S. in the 1800s. They knew that, like, I could be over in this county and I could be saying positive, affirmative things for a person over in that county, and they could heal. And this was, a couple of hundred years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And in the work that Ernest put into creating what is now this church called Center for Spiritual Living was understanding the power of our words and our thoughts and the power of them when they're positive. And that evolves into understanding the basics of manifesting,
Mm-hmm.
but it was very mind-oriented. And when I moved into shamanics and shaman practice, emotions became more a part of what I was doing on top of the mental knowingness. And so that would allow me to experience more things coming to me using visioning words.
Mm-hmm.
And as with most people, I would have some good results and some maybe not so good. I also, at one point, made a major shift. I was wanting to bring in more clients because I wanted to step out of working in television and film and work fully into the spiritual realm. And I was meeting all kinds of new people in the New Age world, new singers and artists. They were all quite wonderful, but they were nowhere near being ready to have someone actually work with them and have money to be able to pay them and all that sort of thing of the normal world. And I was traveling with an amazing writer, minister woman, Terry Cole Whitaker at the time. And she was talking to a group of a couple of thousand people, and she was talking about the power of prayer. And she sort of looked at me at the back of the room, and it was one of those moments where it was like she was looking right at me. This was not for anyone else in this room. And she said, all prayer is answered. Like all request to manifest something is answered. If you're not getting what you want, you need to look at the words you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And I played with that, and I changed around a few words. And a day later, I got a call from a notable internet named Lynn Andrews, who wrote in the time, she and Carlos Castaneda sort of created the whole spiritual hero journey way of writing books that is like still major. And she hired me, and I worked with her for 18 years. Four words made that change.
Yeah.
And yet I still know we're not, you're not necessarily right on the track. And I had the amazing opportunity to be able to meet Dr. Valerie Hunt, who is a biophysicist, mystic, amazing woman. And she did a lot of work because she worked in biophysics and biohealing as a PhD. And one of the things she spoke about and I read about was the importance of moving energy, not just up and down the body, but in and out, through, around, all these different angles, and really spending time moving and activating the energy in the lower half of your body. Because even though we're, a lot of us do chakra this and energy that, we're very much in the upper half of our body. And even sort of our spiritual culture keeps talking about the importance of raising our vibration and raising our frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important, but you also need to be making sure that frequency is active and viable through your entire body. And so I started working with that and doing some specific sort of energy work in the lower half of my body to prepare myself to do some manifestation. And I started noticing that my numbers were much better. And as with many things, when I'm working for a client to manifest something for him, it becomes very good, him or her, actually, because my emotional blocks or triggers are not involved in creating something for another being. So you still have to do a lot of clearing,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of the way of life. But having the lower half of your body activated is the energy that comes from that is that you're standing in the world and you can get what you want. It's a very powerful place in our bodies, especially considering we've pretty much ignored it for most of our lives. So that's the part that I've brought in because I find it amazing. And it's just overall, I actually, with my clients and my groups, we start practically every meditation or energy work piece bringing in energy specifically to the lower half of the body and then moving it on up once we kind of get into that connection. That's where it comes from.
Yeah. Well, okay. So let's look at the lower half of the body, and it's the soles of our feet that actually mostly comes in contact with Earth.
Right.
So, and that's for mostly all. Well, I should say for all of the life that's on planet Earth, that is the central point connection, right? Isn't it?
Yep.
So, I'm
Although
just
the
trying to
interesting
make
thing,
sense of what you're saying with the lower half of the body. It's like it's kind of making sense.
I'm talking up through the root and second chakra.
Uh-huh.
When we're moving energy, it's from the bottom of our foot, and if I have the video training that you first contacted me about, the Crazy Simple Secret. And what we do in there is we come up through the left foot, all the way up the left leg, bringing in energy and bringing it in, not just like, oh, we're going to breathe it in. It's like, I want you to really pull it up. Use your intention. Use your focus. I want that energy brought up with intention and power. And up into your hip and then across your lower back and then back down your right leg all the way into the ground. And I suggest people do this 5 or 10 times. And you'll just feel your lower body like vibrating at a much higher rate than it was before you started.
Yeah.
So, I mean, standing on the earth is great, but most of us in our culture don't have a lot of opportunity for that.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when I'm working with somebody, they're on the 44th floor of a building in Manhattan. And the fact is, my sense of it is that when we're moving energy, like if I want a client to ground, send a grounding cord into the earth from the 44th floor, it doesn't take that cord any longer to get into the earth than it does if we're standing on the beach in Malibu. Because it just makes that connection to Earth that fast.
Yeah, now you're talking about the quantum part of your statement here, the quantum energy, because the quantum energy would seem to move faster than the speed of light. If that makes sense.
Well, it does in my world. But then again, your own intention, your own focus, I think, probably moves faster than the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, we are at the speed of light because we are energy. We are just moving energy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you needed to run down the 44 flights of stairs to touch the ground, it probably will take you some time. And I don't suggest you jump out the window. But when we step out of our physical body, if we're moving energy outside of our physical body, we really don't have time concerns.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. In another conversation, I had discussed time with this person about and how time is not it isn't just the clock ticking, it's a field of existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do a 5-day quest that I'll be doing again at the end of September, and it's called Einstein's Time, Opulent Time, because time is something we created. I mean, I love Einstein's quote about the fact that we only actually have time so that we don't do everything at the same moment. And
yes.
I like that. It's like, oh yeah, we probably would. It'd be like trying to build a freeway and deciding you don't need signs. Well, people will just know which direction they want to drive on what side of the freeway. Probably not the best choice. And in the simple 5 days of the quest, people start realizing how they can step back from being ruled by time, by the clock. And that you can it's literally that you create your own time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that shifting, then all of a sudden, I mean, it releases a lot of stress because, we're always kind of like, well, I don't have time to do that now, or I can't help you with that right now because I'm out of time, or I can't meet you for lunch because I don't have any time. And a lot of that ends up just being habitual excuses because we don't actually want to do that for whatever reason in that moment, but we don't want to say that outright to the person. And it's not even like they would necessarily get angry. They might very well understand. I'm in the middle of this. I need to finish this before I go do that. But we don't say that. We just say, I'm out of time. I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it throws us out of balance.
Yeah. So, okay, we say we're out of time, right? And of course, no matter what, we're connected to everything else, and we make this statement. What does the out of time statement do for other things that we're trying to achieve?
Well, first of all, we're not being true with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of doesn't help us get anywhere in life. And in many times, because, I mean, you see this, or you experienced it, I know I did, it's in families. It's a child's or a parent's answer to a child. And we know that we pick up so much stuff in our first 5 to 8 years. You know, children end up feeling like they're not as important as that piece of paper sitting on dad's desk. I mean, there's all kinds of things. And each time we say that or we do something, like someone asks you to do something and you say, I don't have time, you're calling that experience of not having enough time into your own existence. And as with many things that we sort of say off the top of our heads, which have, let's say, a negative aspect to them or a lacking aspect to them, that all starts piling up. And at the end of the week, you're like, I didn't have time to do anything, which probably isn't the truth either.
Yeah.
But we keep piling that on in such a way that it is affecting our sense of being able to do something. And when we're feeling like we don't have enough time, one of the areas that it shuts down quickest is our creativity. Because we know creativity requires space, a little openness, maybe a little daydreaming. All of those things where we're kind of not feeling overwhelmed by not having enough time allow us to start thinking and expanding and creating. Does that make sense?
Yes, that does make sense. So, I guess the next question to that would be, how do we switch that around so that we are making statements that give us or allow us to experience the infinity of what time is?
Yeah. Well, and as you can imagine, in a 5-day, you know, we see them on Facebook all the time as a 5-day challenge or whatever. I don't like the concept of challenge. I think we're like competing with each other. So I like quests. I do 5-day quests. Mm-hmm. In that time, we're not going to be able to turn your life upside down. But, and this came from a wonderful author that I like, Gay Hendricks, when he was talking about time. So we go on a time diet. And I will work with the people who decide to come and play. And we start looking at those words and those thoughts in our head when they pop up. We just start paying attention and start removing them. And when I first started into religious science to become a practitioner and understand the power of words, we spent 4 years clearing out our minds and focusing how we thought and spoke. And this we're going to take 5 days. And it's amazing what we get done, because once you start seeing how that little word, those little string of words, that statement has been interfering. People have been doing so much inner work over the last few years. They're starting to get stuff really fast. And that's awesome. So in the 5-day, I do a 5-day quest, which is maybe 10 or 15 minutes a day. And then on Thursday, I do an hour lab, because I want people to come in and really be able to ask questions and, you know, kind of make sure they've got it all sorted out, or at least what they're going to get sorted out in 5 days. It's all virtual. But it is really that diet of taking those thoughts and those words and that sense of feeling, I don't have enough time, and just kind of going, why am I feeling like this? Oh, I actually do have enough time. This is something that's popped out of my mind that's telling me that somewhere back there, I had a moment where I didn't feel like I had enough time. So we're just going to pop that feeling in this moment. And we're like, no, we're not popping it into this moment. That's not a feeling. I mean, that's just a memory. We don't need to repeat it.
Right.
And so that's what we do in that 5 days, and it's really fun. And again, people were really amazed at how much they would shut themselves down by stating they didn't have time for something. So it's a fun 5 days. You should come and play.
And I like to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the best parts of studying shamanism for me that I bring into it. Maybe it's just the way I took it. I don't know. But it seemed to me when I looked back through all the various shamanic tribes, indigenous tribes around the world, shamanism is definitely worldwide historically, but that often, very, very often, the young kids in the tribe, in the group, started learning magic, for lack of a better word, at a very young age. And so I see that as something that I like to bring into my trainings, even though part of it's in the quantum field, part of it's in the shamanic world. And I want my clients to play with it. And so when you get to time and things like that, just playing around with it, letting it be easy or lighthearted lets you release that stress. So we have fun.
Yeah. So once we get started down this whole process that we are able to move the energy from our lower body up through the rest of our body to fix the rest of our vibration. No one's ever said that before, by the way. Not on any of the shows or interviews I've ever done. They've always focused on the chakras and vibration. You're right.
Yeah.
It's always been like to the top. So once we fix that and we fix our language so that it's more inviting, what are some of the results that we might get from show up in our life? What are some of the things that some of your clients have said that showed up because they did the work with you?
Interestingly enough, they find they have a lot more balance in their life. And a lot of the work I've been doing recently has been on learning to really hear their intuition or their instinct. Mm-hmm. And using those inner senses, of which there's quite a few. I mean, imagination. We all know we have an imagination, and, you know, we make up games as a kid, and maybe you have a job where you're asked to use it, but you're still probably sort of in a structure to do it. Mm-hmm. But that there's all these inner superpowers, so to speak, that we only use maybe 5 or 10% of. Most of us don't really deeply, fully trust our intuition. We kind of know it's there. We're not quite sure exactly how we know what it is. And so we go into that, and that starts opening up a lot of what's going in their work and their lives. And we mix this with going to the quantum field, where my experience there is people are able, they realize that this whatever has been blocking them for most of their life. And as we're working in the quantum field, for just a few minutes, it seems to completely dissolve for them. And I've been with a number of people for a fairly long time, and it's gone. It's good. They can open up easier or more quickly. And I think that's a lot of where the feeling really balanced in life, because they can expand. They're not feeling closed in by past issues or pains or things that happened that have become this major sort of block to what they would like in their life. And
Right.
so I see that. I get that sort of response. I was working with a woman who was an executive coach who had a bunch of paperwork that during a series of moves had gotten lost, and she needed it. And it was really becoming oppressive for her because it seemed like it would take weeks to find all this. And I asked if she wanted to go to the quantum field and see if we could find it. And I did a process with her, and I recorded it. So when she was ready at home, and she did it with me, so when she was ready to take that day and find these papers, she played it back at home, and literally within an hour she found all of it. And she was like, it's like magic, and it's incredibly practical. So there's the results people experience are learning to be outside of their box and how they can begin to expand their vision in terms of what they want to do with their business. I work with business people and companies from time to time in a fair amount, and they would have maybe a problem happening and not sure how to fix it. I mean, you could put money to it, but that didn't really seem to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And we would talk about it, and I would go in and do something and, do something kind of odd and unexpected, and it would change, and it would change almost instantaneously. And some of those changes, companies came ahead financially quite a bit. It's just, from my sense, it's trusting what I'm sensing or seeing. And now I'm trying to teach more people, especially like business owners and entrepreneurs who are constantly having to make choices, and people are trying to sell them all these different ways to market on this platform or that platform. And it's overwhelming, I mean, from my perspective. And there's really good, a lot of these offers can be really good, but if they're not in alignment with the entrepreneur, it won't work, or it certainly won't work as well as it should. And it will throw issues into the mix.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
I mean, healing, yeah,
Yeah.
Working on people in surgery, yeah, that works.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, there's a lot of different ways to heal, isn't there? It's not just people think of, when they think of heal, they think of broken bones, disease, that sort of stuff. But there's more than one way to heal, especially when we're talking about the spirit, right?
Well, when I was first taught in religious science to do affirmative healing or affirmative treatment, what we would remind clients about, because we would be in hospitals seeing people who were dealing with physical illness, is that we were there to help them come into alignment with their spirit, with And it might mean they get up out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
It might not. It may be that they're coming into alignment with themselves and their lives, and in that process, they are also leaving this earth.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I mean, I would not guarantee anyone XYZ, but I do. I explain.
Yeah.
I mean, I work a lot with scalar waves because scalar waves did amazing stuff for me physically after a broken ankle that didn't heal. But that's just one thing. And people need to feel comfortable with the work that's being done, because in my world, I think about what I do as creating an energy around them that they can heal within.
Mm-hmm.
It's not me.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who do end of life work, and
Mm-hmm.
they also talk about healing so that that person can, as one friend called it, he in his talk, he called it a dance. He said that if somebody heals themselves and they do all the work that, of course, that you're also talking about, that dance becomes beautiful, wonderful, and easy, and everyone feels love that's involved. He said, on the other hand, if they don't do the work, they're still they're still going to have they're still going to pass, but it's not. He said it becomes very difficult. So,
well, from my perspective, and when I came up into religious science, the church that I was with, this is a brand new church,
mm-hmm.
moved from Malibu into West Hollywood. And I think we were less than a month old. And we moved into West Hollywood because we had been requested by some young men who were involved with the church about this thing that was being called AIDS. And
mm-hmm.
so about the first 10 years of my training was very much dealing with that whole element of death and dying. And I mean, death is an amazing time in someone's life. And as with everything, it can be amazingly just joyful and astounding. And others take it a different direction. Much like life, every one of us is really, really unique. But I think, and I think now within our culture, within the American culture, or North American, whatever,
mm-hmm. Well, the culture's the same. It doesn't matter if you're in Canada or the U.S. It's the same culture.
Yeah, well, we've become more open to death.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a workshop done by a doctor up in Seattle who handled children in emergency and urgent care. And he realized that these children who were completely passed out, they were unconscious the entire time they were in the emergency room. And then they were admitted because it was something serious. And when he went to see them later in their hospital room, a number of them, excuse me, had drawn something or were talking about what they saw in the emergency room, which was so accurate, and yet they were unconscious the entire time they were there. And he started thinking about the whole element of people who die and come back, or they're in that sort of middle space. And he talked about at one point when his grandmother passed, he went and was helping to clear out her house sort of in the Midwest. And he found her high school books. This would have been maybe in the 20s or 30s. And in her high school books, they taught, I'm so sorry, they taught students how to care for someone at home who was dying, how to care for their body after they were dead. And, you know, at that point back in the 80s, if somebody in your family was sick and dying, they were in ICU and you were locked out. And I think a lot of that has changed in the last 20 or 30 years, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
It's an amazing shift, and it should be surrounded, in my opinion, with a lot of love and care and joy and celebrating that life.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely agree. So we're starting to run a little low on time here. So one last question, and then if you could give us the best ways to get a hold of you so we can work with you. So what would be the perfect is the wrong word, but it's the best word I have right now. What would the perfect world look like for you? What would be the ultimate goals for our society, in your opinion?
In my perfect world, it would be that we live without borders. That, you know, there's countries and that's fine, but not feeling like, well, that's us and we're them. Or I think
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So. Yeah. And what are the best ways to get a hold of you to work with you?
the best way to get a hold of me is my email, which is CHAREL.StoneCircle@gmail.com.
Okay.
You can probably find me on Facebook and LinkedIn as Charel Morris. And the only tricky part is the first name. It's CHAREL.
Yeah. All right. So, thanks for joining us today. It's been wonderful. I'm sure we all learned lots.
Great time.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Happy for anything I can support people in enjoying their life better.
Yeah. This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.